What are costly mistakes to avoid before you go into a second or third marriage? So there's two main scenarios I want to describe. One is, involves no children, but there's a big difference in the overall value of assets between the two people considering getting married. And given that more than 50% of marriages fail, and even a higher percentage of second and third marriages fail, then you should get a prenup prior to going into the new marriage. The main reason is because if there's a big difference in assets and there is no prenup in place, then after a certain number of years, all of those assets are subject to be just completely split. Whereas with the prenup in place and making certain that there's not new money that flows into the asset base that was subject to the prenup, then if the marriage hits rocky points, then you're retaining the value of that larger pool of assets for yourself rather than giving it up to what may be a second or third divorce that you're going through. The other circumstance is when there's children involved. Then clearly, if there's just the difference in assets, that's one thing. But what's more interesting is what happens if one spouse has assets and the other spouse has the potential to earn a lot of income. And if they've both got children from their prior marriages, then it's tricky. If you have a prenup that protects the assets of one, but the other individual's earning all this income that's going into joint circumstances, then what's really happening is the child of the high earner is ending up with less in the long run, and the child of the person with more assets is ending up with a lot more. So one of the ways to balance that out is that the individual with assets is contributing from their assets into the joint relationship, while the higher earner is contributing their income. You can do some math to kind of come up with a relatively balancing way of doing that so that the joint estate begins to build, and that is then going to get evenly split down to each of the respective spouses' kids from their prior marriages, while protecting the interests of were the higher earning spouse to pass away too early, then there's going to still be assets in the separate assets of the surviving spouse to pass on down to that spouse's children. Depending upon the circumstances, you really want to look at and take some organized actions around second or third marriages.